For today's lecture, we are discussing the process of bone formation and the bones of the axial skeleton. The maintenance of bone or bone homeostasis is the result of the activity of special types of cells found only in bone. These cells are called osteoblast and osteoclast. Osteo is the Greek word for bone. Osteoclast break down or dissolve old or damaged bone. Osteoblasts form new bone by a process called ossification. When mature bone tissue is removed by osteoclasts and new bone tissue is formed by osteoblasts, this is called bone remodeling. Understand that bone remodeling is an ongoing, lifelong process that occurs during normal activity and after injuries such as fractures. An osteocyte is a bone cell found in mature bone tissue. Osteocytes come from osteoblasts, and osteocytes are important because they help to maintain bone tissue. The skeleton consists of the bones of the body. Adults have 206 bones in the skeleton. The human skeleton has two divisions, the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton forms the vertical central axis of the body. It consists of 80 bones that include bones of the head, neck, chest, and back. The axial skeleton protects the brain, spinal cord, heart, and lungs. It also serves as the attachment site for muscles that move the head, neck, and back. The bones of the upper and lower extremities or appendages make up the appendicular skeleton. The first part of the axial skeleton that we are going to discuss is the skull. The skull is formed by the facial bones and the cranial bones. The skull supports the face and protects the brain. There are 8 cranial bones that house and protect the brain. You need to know 6 of them. The parietal and temporal bones, which are paired into the right and left parietal bones and the right and left temporal bone. The single frontal bone, which is the forehead, and the single occipital bone, which is the base of the skull. The facial skeleton consists of 14 bones that form the nasal cavity, enclose the eyeballs, and support the teeth of the upper and lower jaw. You need to know 7 of them. The nasal bones, which form the bridge of your nose, the zygomatic bones, which are your cheekbones, the maxilla bones, which is your upper jaw, and the mandible, which is your lower jaw. The axial skeleton also consists of the thoracic cage, which includes 12 pairs of ribs in the sternum. The first 7 pairs are called true ribs. The costal cartilage of these ribs join directly to the sternum. The next 3 pairs are called false ribs. The costal cartilage of the false ribs is attached to the 7th rib. The last 2 pairs are called floating ribs because they are not connected to costal cartilage or the sternum. The sternum is also called the breastbone, and it's divided into 3 parts. The upper region is the manubrium, the central region is the body, and the lower region is the xiphoid process. The final part of the axial skeleton is the spinal column. The spinal column forms the neck and back. The vertebrae of the spinal column protect the spinal cord, which is a bundle of nerves that relay messages between the brain and the body. The regions of the spine are the cervical spine, which has 7 vertebrae, the thoracic spine, which has 12 vertebrae, the lumbar spine, which has 5 vertebrae, the sacrum, which consists of 5 fused vertebrae, and the coccyx, or the tailbone, which consists of 4 fused vertebrae. You can remember the number of bones in each by thinking about meal times. For the cervical vertebra, you can think 7 vertebrae, which would be 7 a.m. for breakfast. For the thoracic vertebra, you can think 12 noon for lunch. There are 12 vertebrae. And for the lumbar vertebra, you can think 5 p.m., which is dinner, because there are 5 vertebrae. The vertebra has 3 parts: the body, which is a large solid part of the vertebra, the foramen, which is an opening for blood vessels and nerves, and the processes, which are bony protrusions. The cervical vertebra, known as C1 and C2, form the top of the spine at the base of the skull. C1 is the atlas, and C2 is the axis. The atlas and the axis support the skull and allow for movements such as nodding the head yes, and side-to-side motion such as shaking your head no. And that concludes today's lecture on bone formation in the axial skeleton.